that is absolutely most important. And when there's, as I said, the challenge that they might, you might not actually hear them because there's, you know, you've got interference or something like that. So I also want to say here before we go any further in terms of confidentiality, just to sort of know, say quickly that whatever stays shared in the Zoom rooms, obviously it stays in the Zoom rooms. And also I just wanted to, by the way, I have to use something about, it says about the leave the meeting, but it's okay. Something's popped up, Carmen. It's all right. I want to also just mention to take care of yourself, because everyone has a story that connects them emotionally to suicide, whether it's indirectly, maybe through a friend of a friend, or directly, maybe a client or relative. And that's actually the simple fact of the statistics that we know, that everyone in the community is one way or the other directly or indirectly connected through a story of someone's life lost through suicide. So be careful of your own triggers and take good care of yourself. And with all of that, it's remembering it's about making a difference. The reason that we lean into this very difficult area in a way is because we absolutely know we can make a difference. As the Lifeline logos, it's about saving lives, and we know we do that. We can do that. So as I said, I've been in my own experience, I've been very much guided by my own story of having lost some significant friends through suicide. So it's often hard to know if your client actually is suffering, and I like to use the word suffering because it's about that pain, and it's not just any old pain. We call it a psychache in the field of suicide. It's a deep pain of the heart, the psyche, and the mind. It's having thoughts of ending and having thoughts of actually ending their pain, ending their lives. So it's about stopping the pain. And this obviously is not a suicide prevention training, but we need to sort of establish just some of the basics if we talk about this sort of work. This is, of course, especially challenging if you're listening to your client over, as I said, bad connection. And I know for myself, and over the years, even especially at Lifeline, when the connection was bad, or they didn't have much more battery left on their phone and all this sort of stuff, all those external or technological challenges really used to play on me, and sometimes we can, you know, it's holding the technological challenges as well as the personal and psychological connection with the person you're talking to, your client, or your human being who's really struggling. So it's all about trust and connection. And I'm going to now just go over here and share a slide into my slideshow here. I just hope this is the right one. Okay. Now, so we will have to, I'm just going to actually go back a little bit here. I'm going to just give you a little bit of overview of what we're going to do tonight. I'm going to give you a bit of an introduction and hear some of the stories in a trailer for people who have attempted suicide. Then I'm going to put you into your first breakout room, where you'll be able just to share about your reaction to the trailer and your own experience with working with and supporting people with telecommunication who are vulnerable to suicide. And then I will focus, when we come back, on the ASSIST, the Applied Suicide Intervention Training model, and relate particular to the first component, which is all about connecting. Now, the model, of course, is about connecting emotionally to the pain and to the person, but it's also about, I'm going to focus about connecting in terms of the technological challenges. I said I won't go into details of the model, but I'll focus on connecting and understanding, and of course then there's the assisting model. So, but to get us into the world and heart and mind of a person who's thinking about ending their lives with suicide, and some of you have maybe seen this trailer or even the show before. It's from the ABC. It's called Suicide Attempt Survivors, and their question and answer. It's that show. You Can't Ask That. So I'm going to I'll just see whether I can move this so you can see the whole screen. Is it better like this if I meant go like that? Oh, hang on, I've gone to the wrong screen. Is it better like this? Yeah, I hope so. I can't hear anyone, but I hope so. So I'm going to just play this trailer. It just goes for a couple of minutes just to step into the world of someone actually, of people who actually have had a suicide attempt and they survived, and what it's like for them to, as they reflect back on their own story, what it's like to live with that stigma and that whole experience. So let me play that.
This is my shot. This is my shot of fame. Why did you try to kill yourself? When you start. How come you're still alive? It's a hard one to answer. Do you ever regret not dying? Did you do yourself any physical damage? Yeah, that's a very good question. Yes. Don't you think you're selfish and cowardly? Fuck no. Are suicidal people crazy? Okay, you're ready for this? Yep. Do people now treat you like you were emotionally delicate all the time? Yeah, I've had that happen. For a while afterwards, yes. And people don't know how to deal with you, handle you. It's like I was wrapped up in cotton wool. People just like to pretend like it never happened. No one knows what happened. We told everyone you fell for a roof, it's okay. And in reality, it's like, no, everyone knows I attempted suicide. You do feel really ashamed about the emotions you're feeling and what you've just done. You're not really protecting me, you're prolonging this fucking pain or this embarrassment. After you've done that, you try and walk down the main street of your hometown. You think everyone knows, everyone's looking at me. He tried to kill himself. Oh, he must be weak, pathetic. A few weeks later, when I eventually, I went back out to the football, not to coach, just to be part of it. A parent put a complaint in the football club for me even being there. Yeah, I cop so much shit from so many people over the years, and mostly from people who would have called themselves my friends. People always say things like, oh, why'd you do that? That was so stupid. Don't tell them that they're stupid. Don't tell them that they're doing the wrong thing. They've done it. They can't undo it. Be there for them. I've got some really good mates at the moment that we talk openly to each other about this sort of stuff. And mate, he pulled up in his ute and got a beer out and was standing at the back of the ute. And he just simply said to me, he said, how's your head? That's all he had to say. Doesn't have to be much, does it? Doesn't have to be a long-winded conversation. Hey, mate.
It's just the... So just going back to that trailer, and I hope you can still hear me. It's really this just a snippet of what you actually get to see in this really very, very powerful documentary of people sharing their story. So they're very brave people who are talking about the experience. And in a minute, I'd like you to go into your, Carmen's kindly going to put you into breakout rooms. And in the breakout rooms, then if you want to, with your phone, if you've got it nearby, you might even just want to take a photo of this slide. So you want to go around your group, obviously introduce yourself to each other, but really about share your reaction and reflection on that You Can't Ask That suicide attempt survivors trailer that I just showed you. And what do you find challenging about supporting clients vulnerable to suicide? Just staying with that whole notion first before we talk a bit further about the telecommunication. So just those two questions as you introduce yourself. You've got 10 minutes, so you've got plenty of time, and really get a chance to unpack your reactions, to what the different people said, whether it's to do with the stigma and the shame they felt, or anything that's come up. So Carmen, could you kindly... Wonderful. Well, I'd love to hear your reactions and your thoughts about that little trailer on the You Can't Ask That, about what people who've survived a suicide attempt, what they shared in that short trailer. Maybe some of you joined a bit later, you might have missed that. So you can just Google it online. It's from the ABC, and it's you can watch it on their View program. Look, And I'm going to make sure we leave enough time at the end so you can, any comments, any thoughts, you're welcome to ask that. What I'd like to do now is I'd just like to actually go to the assist model. Hang on, let me just share my screen. And here we go. And I go to the next slide. Okay, we've gone in the breakout room, and I just make that a bit larger so you can see that a bit better. Sorry. So some of you are very familiar with the ASSIST, the Applied Suicide Intervention Training skill. This is just a couple of slides from the workbook actually, but I just wanted you to focus on the diagram from working from the left to the right, starting from the lovely orange yellow color to the green. And the first part of the ASSIST program is it's connecting. As I said to you, that's actually the most important thing in suicide intervention. And if you can't connect, you can't actually help people. And so it's about actually sort of trying to step into the world, exploring with them, connecting with them, and asking actually the question, actually, if they've got thoughts of suicide, have they got thoughts of killing themselves? So as you see up the top, it says they're in their past and they're feeling alone. And once you're connected, and it's like this dance from going backwards and forwards, you sometimes you feel you're connecting more, and then you might respond in a way that isn't necessarily helpful to them, that they retreat, and once again you walk with them. And it's like in the assist program, that's, they say, it's like doing a dance with them, and you're being guided by them, but you're trying to bring them basically to the green side, to the assisting side. But that process can take quite a bit of time, and you certainly wouldn't start assisting them unless you have really connected with them very well and understood their story, their situation. So this is then the blue part, which is the understanding, where the listener, the counsellor, psychologist, support person listens and reviews. And it's about working mainly with the ambivalence, in the present moment, and it's about being engaged, and then moving them once that you have understood their situation and their pain. You are moving with them into the future, where you're linking them to life. So that's basically, in a nutshell, the assist model. And here, in the next slide, oops, let me sure that goes here. It's another way of mapping it out. So up the top you can see is when the caregiver explores the invitation and asks about suicide. And of course, first you've got to have a bit of a connection, a relationship to be able to, for them to actually confide in you, and before you can actually ask. Then they meet the person at risk, and needs for being recognized in terms of their pain and where they're at with in their whatever suffering or trauma they're experiencing. And with you, they give you permission basically through this connection with it, so the person at risk feels valued, and there is a sense of great relief of this pain, because that actually is being lifted through this connection. And so the person is more likely to answer honestly their thoughts about suicide, talk openly about suicide. And of course, I always say to people, most of the time people just have thoughts of suicide, and even if they have a plan, if they're with you and they're totally safe. Now I have to say, that's one of the challenges of working over the phone or telehealth, is that you are not in the environment. You are in total different worlds, and so obviously they actually become a bit more vulnerable than to suicide, because you don't know whether they're standing somewhere very vulnerable, that's very vicarious and very dangerous. Whereas if they're in your rooms, in your office or whatever, it's a very different situation. So it is certainly more challenging. And of course you can see that the understanding steps and the assistant models before. So that's, I'll just quickly touch on that too. So it's the listening to reasons for dying first, before you talk about listening to reasons for living. That's really important. So you don't basically push them into, well, you've got your children, you've got so many things to live for. That's irrelevant for them, because they just want to focus, they're in their pain, and you explore with them reasons for dying. So when you review the risk, then of course there's perspective and care, they feel accepted, respected, and you move towards their life side, and you have, of course, helped them develop their safe plan as you do this. But there's no rush, especially if you have this good connection with them and they're safe with you. And then, of course, then you do all the practical things for you, and contact a plan, a safe plan, and follow up with commitments. There's hope, there's safety, they feel encouraged, supported, and you commit to their safe plan and keep them safe. So with all of that, I guess, and I'm just going to stop sharing here so I can see you a bit better here. With all of that, so basically that's the assist model, and maybe just, I can see a lot of you on the screen, just put your hand up if you've done any of the assist training. Put your hand up. Okay, there's only not many. Okay. I can't see everyone, but can I say, highly recommend for anyone here who isn't familiar with any of the suicide prevention model, please do it. It's everyone's responsibility. It's one of the most important things to do, and you don't have to be a counsellor, psychologist, social worker. It's for every person, and this is very much the notion of suicide education these days, that whether you're a cleaner or a CEO of a big organisation, everyone needs to know basically a safe talk on how to connect with how to basically do first aid. That's really, it's like everyone needs to do first aid and needs to know how to basically stop a wound from bleeding. So now I'd like to sort of focus a little bit more on actually the challenge of, so we looked at the model just briefly as an overview and on focusing on connecting, but how do you do that when you're actually not physically in their space, but you're going into their world via the phone or via online, whatever platform you're using. And when you actually step into their world, you get an incredible insight into their environment, their resources, and it actually becomes a very different situation. I was thinking, when in my work, I work predominantly with older people actually in residential care. So let me tell you, they're the most at risk group of people actually in our society. 85 and over men are the highest people who die through suicide in our population in Australia. But I probably every day with someone who's telling me about, you can hear that they're suffering and they really wish they wouldn't be here, and there's this ambivalence, and so but they're right in front of me, whereas it's much harder when you're actually, you're talking like we are talking now over the screen. But you can basically step in, you can see a little bit about my background here. Now that looks maybe quite ordered, I've cleaned it all up, but if you were in an environment, your client was the room was very dark, there was dirty plates around, maybe empty beer bottles lying around, you could tell there's food that hasn't been cleaned away for days lying around. You get a sense of they're really, really struggling. Like, you don't get that when they come into your office. And so this is really, really powerful, and you've got to really work with their environment in a really respectful, sensitive way. So you're really, it's stepping into their world. So it's a bit like, I was thinking it's a little bit like, for some of you might have done any sort of home visits, when you actually go and see people in their homes. And of course, it's a whole different way of engaging with people. However, you really step into their world, and it's very, very insightful. Or in my case, going to people's rooms, they've been set up for by their family or themselves. You really see a little bit about their life. Like today, for example, yesterday actually, no, today's Monday, I was with a lady, and her husband only just died a few weeks ago, and she has lost so much, and she's severely depressed. She doesn't go out of her room at all. She just barely eats the food she receives. But she, when I asked her a little bit about her husband, whether she had any photos, she said to me, my family brought the photos in. Apparently they brought all sorts of things in, but she ordered it all to be taken away. She didn't want it. Now, what does that tell you? What does that tell you? She has given up. She doesn't want to live. She doesn't want anything to do with. She's totally disengaging from the world around her. Now, so immediately I can tell by environment that this lady is struggling. So, she kept on saying, "Why are you wanting to talk to me? what's your interest in me? She was quite suspicious, and she really, and I had to really work hard to sort of genuinely, convince her that her life mattered, and that I was concerned about her well-being, her mental health, and being able to talk about the grieving process, and just, I suppose, for her, that sense of, she just said, what's the point of living now, but simply me asking about, have you got any photos of your husband? Where did you meet? And her very slow response, well, what's the point of me telling you this? Gives me a strong indicator how vulnerable she is, and that we need to really put a real circle of support around her in this vulnerable time, so, but you can do this, I'm saying that I did that face-to-face, but I was in her environment, and you would equally do that similar when you talk to someone, whether it's over the phone, but or with a visual prompt, like when you have a video, like in Zoom or any other platform. So it's working with the environment, and it's being able to acknowledge their space. The other thing, I guess, it's I know there's a lot of training going around about how we should be talking to people when you're maybe talking to them with the Zoom, for example, and that you, of course, professionally, you get them to go out of if they're lying on their bed, you say, look, we've got a contract, you've got to sit out of your bed, and it's not a good environment to have a session now, and all that sort of stuff, which is absolutely very well and good. However, when someone is suicidal, they are not worried about anything in terms of boundaries. All they're consumed about is their pain. So we have to really work quite differently with people in those sort of circumstances, and drop all those other maybe standards, but actually really go into their world, and actually, or if they're on the phone, equally to actually find out, where actually are you? I can hear noises in the background. You might hear an argument in the background. I can hear you there near the traffic, near the road, near a railway station or whatever. You tell me a little bit where you are, without sort of probing them to the point where they think you're going to get emergency. But you are obviously thinking about that. Certainly that would be certainly the strategy at Lifeline, but it's really about trying to step into the world. Can you go somewhere where it's more quiet, where you feel more, where there's more safety for you, maybe out of the sun if it's a really hot day where it's a bit cooler, or the other way around, you might be in a very dark room. Is there any chance you can move into the garden, maybe near some plants or something, where that possibly that could lift them a little bit, just that shift in the environment. So you actually have to step in the world and walk with them to see where they're in a safer place. And yes, they certainly, if they don't want to do it, they will tell you, and as you know yourself. But the other thing, I suppose, I guess I wanted to mention here is we always have to remember, when we do telecommunication, they are the ones who can hang up. They're the ones who simply say, I've got a bad connection, and just leave. Whereas it's just very, very different when they're in your rooms and where you're basically on your turf. Basically, they have the power, which is very good for them, because, when we talk about empowerment, they really are the ones who can come or go. And at the same time, of course, as you know, when someone is vulnerable to suicide, you do everything you can to stay connected with them, and because you don't want to lose that connection. And you could also say at the same time, just in case we get disconnected, would you mind if I ring you back or something like that, because we've got a bad reception? But you want to sort of maybe cover all these sort of bases. And I guess I want to focus now more on some of those technological barriers on the phone and on online counselling. But the visual barriers, when this is on the phone, when you actually can't see them, of course, your tone of voice is absolutely pivotal, and often I find when I'm on the phone, I actually will close my eyes, or I will shut out all sorts of visual prompts around me out, so I can really actually you know, step into the sound of the voice of the client, because so you're not distracted, because it is very hard to focus sometimes. It could be a cognitivity a barrier with bad connection. Maybe ask them, how's your phone battery? Have you got enough? You know, what's your percentage? They wouldn't be thinking about them if they're feeling suicidal, but you might want to know, because they might only have 5% left, and you want to actually be proactive and see whether they can, if they can plug into some sort of power source. The volume issues, noise issues, all those physical barriers, and privacy might be a big issue that they might not be able to talk to you about in more detail because there are other people around. Online, of course, issues are the bad connection, the light, you know, they can't see them. Once again, it's very similar in terms of public space, and how do you sort of maybe proactively approach that? So when you know someone is very vulnerable, so you can actually ask them, you're like a step ahead of them in a way to make sure the connection is not going to be disrupted. So these are sort of some of the physical, the technological challenges. And in your, I'm going to just share the next slide with you, which, sorry, hang on. I'll just do this one here. Sorry. So in a minute, you're going to go into your second breakout room, and in that breakout room, I want you to think about some of the extra challenges that you've noticed in your work, or would maybe anticipate to notice if you aren't working online or over the phone, when you're connecting to your clients, the people online or over the phone or online. And can I say, when we talk about suicide, we you know, we're talking in terms of our clients, but suicide is something that happens not just to our clients, it happens to our family members, it happens to our friends, because it's part of sadly of our humanity. So we need to sort of even think about all of this as human beings, as a community, that how do we, you know, overcome some of these challenges. Also, I want you to then go through maybe some of the questions on the worksheet that the You Thrive worksheet that Carmen was talked about, and share maybe some ideas and experiences on how you've addressed these telehealth barriers. As I said, some of those over the phone, on the line. But and you might sort of say, look, I had an experience and I found this worked really well, you know. So can you do that in your groups? You've got another 10 minutes, and then we'll come back. And then we'll have time to have questions and to debrief this second breakout room. So if I can ask you, Carmen, kindly, if you could just put everyone in the breakout rooms. And once again, if you haven't got this, you might want to take a photo of this slide, and then you can take that into the breakout rooms.
Great. I'll start those breakout rooms now. Just remind everybody to click join for your room, and make sure that you have your microphone and your video on, so that you can fully participate with the other people in the room. Thank you.
Wonderful.
I just want to let everyone know that in this Q&A section, we will be recording, because we want to put this up on YouTube for everyone's benefit. So if you want to mute your video when you ask a question, that's absolutely fine. But just so that you know, we're recording this section.
Welcome back, and thank you for coming back. And I was very glad to join in a little group, wherever they are. Can't find them now, but a nice little group of people where we were able to talk. And really, this is a chance now for you to ask question. And I just briefly, just to sort of lead a little bit into it, and I hope my group doesn't mind, but and I can see Anne, one of the people in our group, just popped up. You know, things like silence, you know, when you're on the phone, for example, when there's a silence, is it a connectivity problem, or is it truly a silence because they are trying to really process, you know, something very significant that's been shared, you know? And I think one of the ladies, and I can't remember, she said, you know, it's a bit like take your time, in a very caring, soft voice. And if it is a connectivity problem, they will say, oh, it's actually my phone or whatever, or I've just sort of got disconnected. But you always err with telehealth on the side of that they are there with you, and there was it's actually a technical problem, maybe even if it's not. That's very important. And the other thing was, I don't know whether some of you talked about that whole thing, and I can really relate to this, where where you're on the phone, or you might be whether it's whether it's Messenger or whatever you're using to, even they can see you with telehealth, but they're walking around the room and they lighting up a cigarette, and someone's walking in and having a conversation while you are trying to really step into their world, and it just feels sometimes very, very distracting. Or the TV is on. I find that really hard when the television is on, and when I ask someone to turn the TV, is it possible to turn the TV down? It's actually for me rather than for them, because often people have the TV on all the time. I don't, and I find it very hard to say, look, it really helps me if we can. I get distracted. It's not about them, but I find it really hard to stay focused. And I really want to actually know your story, and I want to stay focused. And so, would you mind if we turn the TV maybe down a bit? Because they will often say, oh, I don't care. But it helps me actually, not them. So just to be really, just to honest, I share that with them, if that's an issue. So any questions, any comments from different groups for what people are sharing, and when we're talking about some of these barriers? Don't be shy. You have to unmute yourself, I think.
Well, I'll start, Beate, because I had this question that's always a burning one for me, and that is that we were talking before about the question, what's the point? And for me, it's such a profoundly existential question, and it's a pervasive question for someone. So what's your recommendation on how to respond to someone who asks that question? Well, what's the point of talking to you? What's the point of living? What's the point of anything?
Carmen, and it is such a really, as you said, it's an existential question, and really about what's the point of my life, or it could be what's the point of you coming in and talking to me. Why would it matter? So there's so many levels of it, but you always look at it from that whole range rather than just one level. Just rather than, well, what's the point? If I'm just a social worker walking in, it is actually, you always want to see a question which is a real, a question of wondering, what's the point of my life at this stage of my life, or what's happened, that you look at it from every angle. And with this lady, as I said, I was mentioning, she more or less asked me that question, or she didn't ask me, but she gave me that sort of statement, really, what's the point, of even engaging with you? And she wasn't a talker, so it was really hard. And I'm thinking, gosh, this is, how do I connect with this lady? And I sort of tried this and tried that. She wouldn't really, and she was also, she had a hearing aid, and which one wasn't working, so it was a bit like being on the phone. It was face to face, but she couldn't hear me properly also. And with COVID, we have to have, a distance, between us, so I couldn't really get close to her either. And I said to her, well, you know what, you're right. You're really wondering, what's the point of me actually showing interest in you on that level? And in terms of why would I be interested? And then I basically just used this opportunities. I know you've told me your husband died recently, and you've lost so much coming into care. You're here, and I know you've had a big life beforehand, and now you're in this empty room. It makes me really wonder, whether I didn't actually ask whether, but I would probably say something like whether you want to keep living, asking that question, what's the point of being alive to even now after having lost so much? And that, I suppose, a little bit of that psychosocial grief education, and that when you've lost so much, those questions do come up, and very normally, naturally, and we're here together. You know, no one can go through so much change and loss by themselves. We're here as a community together. And there was a point where I just stopped, and there was a bit of silence, and I was just mentioning to Carmen, she actually teared up, which really surprised me. And I thought, this woman behind this facade, she's so vulnerable and so sad, but you know, and she really softened after, and just, I suppose, acknowledge her very, very real question, you know, of what's the point. And I said to her, you know, would it be okay if I come next week and see you? You know, if you don't want to see me, you can just next week tell me, thumbs up, thumbs down. I understand, I respect your choice, but I would like to see you next week. But if you don't, that's okay. I really respect that. So when I came today, you know, she was actually quite happy to see me, which really shocked me. So I learned a big lesson there, you know, how important it is just to give a person that dignity of choice, and also that respect, and just to be really sincere with her where she was at, you know. Anyway, so it's a ongoing story. So any questions? Other questions? I think, or comments, or something just discussed in your rooms.
I guess I just wanted to make a comment, because I've been working with an 81-year-old lady who said exactly, you know, those. You know, what's the point of living? But she's been seeing me face to face, and she's been, and like you, I've given her some choices, and she's willing to come and see me face to face, and I can see that her mood is lifting a little. But what I was just going to say was that when someone says, what's the point of living, and they have those sort of existential questions, that doesn't necessarily mean that they have an intention or a plan to actually take their life. And I think the critical thing is what you were talking about, that you try and engage them, and that you try to show that, you know, you have, I guess you have some understanding of why they're asking these questions, you know, and being able to say, well, you have experienced, in the case of my lady, she had lost her daughter to cancer, and she's going through COVID-19 as well. So anything she could have done, anything that could have helped her to reduce her isolation, has been taken away from her. And this pandemic continues. But she has been willing to come back because she has understood that she can actually talk and that someone will listen. Yeah. So I think that seems to be the really critical thing, the engagement.
Yes. Yeah, no, good on you. It sounds like you've got a good connection with this lady, and yeah, and I think, you know, the main thing is, and I've seen this so often, is that people then, maybe they've got thoughts of suicide. Quickly, I've got to go and assess them and escalate this, and, you know, tick all the boxes and take them. You know, I've seen people be sent to emergency department, and really they are fine, they're safe. They just need a bit of kindness and compassion, as you said, a listening ear, a cup of tea, and also to have the people around them informed. Look, this lady needs extra support right now, and what can we do to ensure that it's happening? You know, in whatever situation that is in. But that is actually much more important than you know, making sure we're ticking all the right boxes. It can actually, I've seen actually that do much more harm than good. And I'm not saying that against escalating and all that sort of stuff. That's absolutely critical, but we need to know when and when not to. And as you know, when someone is going through really severe grief, and when they've lost so much, and when they're feeling frail as well, that's you know, it's supporting them in that moment, rather than escalating it and thinking we're saving someone's life, you know. Yeah. Any other questions?
Not a question, but just a comment. I do a lot of work for Lifeline, and I was going to say, just never underestimate the value of acknowledging people's.
Oh, I've lost you, Leslie. You're. I have to unmute yourself, Leslie. You're accidentally. I think the microphone got turned off. We heard you in the beginning. Just switch it again. Yeah, that's it. Keep going.
I was just going to say, never underestimate the power of being able to talk about it, because there's probably no one else. You know, they may actually come out and say, I feel suicidal or feel like killing myself, but they don't actually talk about it and what those feelings and what things have happened in their life, you know, to bring them to that stage. So, you know, just don't underestimate the power that you have of listening to their story and acknowledging that pain that they feel.
Thanks, Leslie. And that's a really, really good note. I know we're coming closely to the end, because that power in simply by being able to talk about it, that is often all that it needs. They're already in problem solving mode once they know they've been heard without judgment and understood. So look, good on you. Thank you, Leslie. And I suppose in the training that I'll be running later this month, you know, I'd be very much also looking at our own barriers. You know, what's maybe stopping me from my own sort of experience, my own fears that sort of stops me from actually asking those questions and engaging in that way, because it is often, it's our own concerns that, you know, will I make it worse, or, you know, but which of course you don't, but it's overcoming those barriers, so we can be much more present to people and engage with them. Yeah.
Not sure if we have any other questions. We've actually come to the end of our time this evening. So if there are no other questions, I really want to say to you, Beate, thank you for contributing your time and energy to this session this evening. To everyone who came along, thank you for participating. If you want to do more on this, Beate is running a full day session on Saturday the 22nd of August called Did I Miss Something? Perceiving Suicidal Thoughts, and we will be sending you a special offer on that as a participant in the You Thrive sessions as well. So
like a counselling organisation that has a really good link into suicide